Imagine standing in a room filled with cheering crowds, holding everything you once thought you wanted, yet feeling an inexplicable cold settle deep in your bones. The promotion you fought for, the relationship you desired, the luxury item you saved months to buy, they all arrive, and instead of joy, you feel nothing. The things that once ignited your passion now slide off you like rain on stone. You might be asking yourself a terrifying question. Have I become broken? Have I lost the ability to feel? For Carl Jung, this hollow feeling was not a sign of depression or ingratitude. It was something far more significant. It was an invitation, a secret summons to the highest level of human consciousness, a state he called Sophia. It is the ancient Greek word for wisdom, but for Jung, it represented the ultimate destination of the soul, a realm so rare that most people will spend their entire lives without ever glimpsing its horizon. Why? Because to reach Sophia, you must first navigate a dark and terrifying forest that Jung named the Great Solitude. Today, I invite you to sit down, breathe deeply, and listen. I will walk you through 8 undeniable signs that wisdom is knocking on the door of your soul. We will explore why Jung believed this final stage of development is the loneliest, yet the most powerful place a human being can ever stand. Before we uncover the signs, you need to understand the map Jung drew of the human psyche. He saw the soul not as a single room, but as an ancient, multi-story house. The first floor is the realm of basic instinct, which he symbolized by Eve. Here, we are driven by primal needs, safety, survival, hunger, and the desperate cling for security. We love because we need protection. We stay because we fear loss. The core motivation is simply to satisfy the body's demands and the immature ego's cry for safety. The next level is the realm of Helen, the symbol of passion and ambition. This is the floor of romantic intoxication and the burning desire to be the protagonist of your own story. We love because we are consumed by desire. We strive because we need to conquer and be seen. The ego here doesn't just want to survive, it wants to shine. Higher still is the level of Mary, the domain of morality, ethics, and ideals. Here, the person begins to transcend personal impulses and align with larger values: responsibility, sacrifice, community standards, and sacred beliefs. The ego learns to restrain instinct and passion, placing itself within a structured order. Yet, it is still dependent on external frameworks and handed-down rules. And then, at the very top, is Sophia. This is not about instinct, passion, or even morality. Sophia is wisdom. At this level, you transcend both desire and dogma. You are no longer driven to prove yourself or fit into a mold. Your gaze is clear, unclouded by the ego's constant chatter. You don't just live according to truth, you become aligned with it. Touching Sophia isn't about earning a spiritual badge. It is the completion of a full circle of consciousness. Instinct is understood. Passion is transformed. Morality is absorbed. And wisdom emerges as the natural, ripened fruit of inner work. If you feel you are standing at a threshold that feels both cold and pure, you may be stepping onto the staircase that leads to that highest floor, where the wind blows stronger, but the horizon opens wider than you ever imagined. Now, let us begin with the first of the 8 signs. The first sign that you are approaching Sophia is that you move beyond the hero archetype. In the landscape of psychological growth, the hero is one of the most seductive figures. It is the voice that urges you into the world to conquer challenges, overcome adversity, and assert your will. At this level, life is a battlefield. You need enemies to feel strong. You need an audience to know you shine. And for a long time, this drive is necessary. It builds the ego. It creates momentum. But when you begin to approach Sophia, a subtle, seismic shift occurs. You are no longer obsessed with being the protagonist of your own movie. You still act, you still commit, but you are no longer driven by the need to win to prove your worth. You stop seeing every obstacle as an enemy to be slain and start seeing it as a part of life's structure that needs to be understood. Jung wrote that enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. The hero chases the light to conquer it. The one approaching Sophia has the courage to look directly at their own darkness. When you stop needing to be the hero, you realize that your shadow, your fear, your jealousy, your hunger for recognition, is not an enemy. It is a forgotten fragment of your own soul. In modern life, the hero is constantly reinforced by achievement culture. You are told to push limits, break through, and defeat your old self. But if you pay attention, there comes a moment of exhaustion, even in the midst of winning. The entrepreneur reaches the top and feels empty. The self-improvement junkie keeps healing and upgrading, yet still feels anxious. These are signs that the heroic ego is running on a hamster wheel with no finish line. When you touch Sophia, you step off that wheel. Not because you failed, but because you finally see the hollow nature of constantly needing to be better than others, or even better than who you were yesterday. You no longer need to turn every experience into an inspiring story. You allow yourself to be ordinary. You allow yourself to be vulnerable. You allow yourself to not have the answers. This calm is not surrender. It is a deeper strength, one that doesn't require trophies. This is a profound cracking of the social mask. You realize that the image of, I am strong, I am independent, I overcome everything, was a mask that served a purpose. When you take it off, you may feel empty, confused. But that emptiness is the space where wisdom grows. Sophia doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need applause. It exists in inner stillness. Wisdom doesn't need applause. It grows in the soil of inner stillness. Moving beyond the hero doesn't mean abandoning strength. It means integrating it. You can still act decisively, but you are no longer controlled by the hunger to validate your ego. You fight only when something truly valuable must be protected. You choose silence when silence is wise. When this happens, life no longer feels like a series of obstacles, but a process to be understood. You stop asking, how do I win? And start asking, what is this teaching me about myself? That single question marks the passage from hero to sage. And that is the first sign that you are touching Sophia. The second sign is the development of what we can call psychological immunity. This is not coldness or detachment. It is not the armor of someone who says, I don't care, while secretly bleeding. It is the state where you feel everything fully, yet are no longer swept away by the flood. Between what someone says and how you respond, a pause appears. And that pause is the signature of a mature consciousness. Jung taught that most human conflict is born from projection. We see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. When you haven't faced your shadow, you are easily triggered. A criticism lands on the wound of not good enough. Indifference awakens the fear of being unloved. You react not to the present moment, but to an unhealed past. But when you begin the work of observing your fears, admitting your jealousy, and recognizing your need for validation, you slowly disarm those inner explosives. Then, when someone criticizes you, you can pause and ask, is there truth here I can learn from? If there is, you adjust. If there isn't, you let it pass. You no longer absorb every opinion as a verdict on your worth. Imagine someone terrified of rejection. If their partner was quiet for an evening, they would spiral into stories of inadequacy. After deep self-work, they trace that anxiety back to a childhood of emotional instability. Once the root is seen, the panic fades. When the other person is busy and doesn't reply, there is no longer chaos. Not because love has faded, but because self-worth is no longer fused to another's behavior. Psychological immunity also changes how you receive praise. You might have once been addicted to recognition, each compliment a hit of validation for the ego. Now, you appreciate it, but you don't build your identity on it. You know that today people may celebrate you, and tomorrow they may turn away. If your foundation rests on shifting sand, you will never be stable. As you move towards Sophia, you become inwardly steadier. You know your strengths and your limits. You don't need to be perfect to feel whole. You can enter a debate without it becoming a battle for your life. You can listen without feeling threatened. The most beautiful result of this immunity is freedom. Freedom from the need to please. Freedom from the obsession with being right. Freedom from performing perfection to be accepted. The world remains noisy, but your inner ground no longer trembles with every gust of wind. That is a clear sign you are moving closer to Sophia. The third sign is that you begin to integrate your own shadow. The shadow is not just the bad parts of us we hide. It is the jealousy that rises when a friend succeeds. It is the quiet satisfaction when someone who hurt you finally fails. It is the hunger for power you deny to maintain a gentle image. It is the fear of abandonment that makes you try to control those you love. When these parts stay unconscious, we project them. We call others selfish while subtly manipulating. We condemn arrogance while secretly craving admiration. The sign that you are approaching Sophia is not that these feelings disappear. It is that you are awake enough to say, "That lives in me, too." Integrating the shadow doesn't mean acting on your lowest impulses. It means stopping the pretense of purity. It's like walking into the basement of an old house you've kept locked for years out of fear. When you finally turn on the light, you see dust and cobwebs. It's uncomfortable, but you are no longer haunted by noises in the dark. The person who touches Sophia is no longer unconsciously controlled by the shadow. They see it, name it, and then choose their actions consciously. In daily life, this shows up in ordinary moments. When criticized, instead of attacking back, you ask, "Why does this sting?" When jealousy arises, you don't just blame the other. You recognize your own fear of losing value. When you fail, you don't build a story that the world is against you. You admit your limits. This inner honesty feels cold, but it is deeply liberating. You stop wasting energy protecting a perfect image. Jung knew that the more a part of you is denied, the more violently it erupts. The person who insists they are never angry often stores resentment for years, only to explode in the most damaging way. The one aware of their anger can say, "I am furious, but I choose not to harm you." The shadow doesn't vanish, it is transformed. And this transformation is a movement towards Sophia, where instinct is not rejected, but integrated into the whole of who you are. Integrating the shadow also makes you more compassionate. When you know you have been selfish, petty, and wrong, you stop seeing the world in black and white. You understand that every person carries an invisible battle. This empathy is not weakness. It is the result of walking through your own darkness and surviving. You no longer need the moral high ground to feel secure. If lately you notice you judge less, defend less, yet see your own hidden motives more clearly, you may be standing at the threshold of Sophia. The fourth sign is the capacity to hold paradox. One of the deepest signs that you are moving toward wisdom is not that you have found the final answer, but that you are no longer afraid of questions without resolution. You begin to hold paradoxes that once confused you. You see that a person can be strong and fragile, loving and angry, longing for freedom yet afraid of being alone. Instead of rushing to pick a side, you learn to remain in the tension between poles without tearing yourself apart. At lower levels, the ego demands certainty. It wants black or white, right or wrong, friend or enemy. But as you approach Sophia, you accept that inner life doesn't run on binary logic. Jung said that the greater the tension between opposites, the greater the potential. That tension is where psychological energy is born. When you stop rushing to suppress one side to protect the other, you allow transformation to unfold. Holding paradox doesn't mean accepting lies. It is the capacity to see both light and shadow in the same person, including yourself. You can admit jealousy without condemning yourself. You can admit you need love while also needing space. At the level of Sophia, you stop constructing a flawless image to gain approval. You acknowledge your complexity because you know the shadow, once seen, no longer controls you from behind. In relationships, this becomes clear. In the past, you may have left someone because they didn't meet your expectations, or you bent yourself into a shape someone else desired. When you can hold paradox, you understand that a mature relationship contains both harmony and difference. You can love someone without needing them to mirror you. You can disagree without seeing it as a threat. Conflict is no longer proof of collapse, but an opportunity for expanded awareness. From a Jungian perspective, this is where you begin integrating inner opposites, anima and animus, reason and emotion, softness and decisiveness. Instead of letting one side dominate, you let them speak to each other, moving toward what feels most authentic. As you hear this, you may recognize changes in yourself. You are less eager to argue just to prove you're right. You listen more. You can say, "I understand why you see it that way," without feeling threatened. You accept that two different truths can coexist. And in that moment, you step out of the ego's battlefield. The fifth sign is a shift from control to flow. There was a time when you believed maturity meant controlling everything. Controlling your emotions so you wouldn't appear weak. Controlling others so you wouldn't get hurt. controlling the future so nothing unexpected could shake you. You planned every step, calculated every risk, gripping the reins of life like a wild horse. But the tighter you held, the more exhausted you became. The more you tried to fix everything in place, the more afraid you felt when something slipped. That was the stage where the ego believed it had to be in charge to feel safe. As you move towards Sophia, a shift happens. You are no longer obsessed with control. You start to see that absolute control is an illusion of the ego, a defense against life's uncertainty. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When you haven't faced your unconscious fears, you try to control the outside world to compensate. But when you dare to enter your own inner darkness, you realize that what needs to change is not the circumstance, but the way you meet it. Flow is not giving up. It is not passivity. It is an inner steadiness so grounded that you don't need to force reality to be different. Before, you acted from fear of losing control. Now, you act from a deep trust in the unfolding of life. Think of someone who once tried to control their relationship at every turn. Constant checking, worrying, questioning. Every silence was a threat. After painful lessons, they realized it was their own fear of abandonment driving everything. When they faced that wound, they no longer needed to control. They still loved, but without clinging. They still cared, but without surveillance. The relationship grew lighter. The change didn't come from strategy, but from awareness. At the level of Sophia, you understand that life is like a vast river. If you swim against the current just to prove your strength, you exhaust yourself. If you relax and sense the direction, you can travel farther with less strain. This is not surrendering to fate, it is cooperating with it. Jung called this individuation, the process where you stop identifying with the narrow ego and align with a deeper order. The paradox is that when you stop over-controlling, life often feels more harmonious. Relationships relax. Work feels less oppressive. Your inner world becomes quieter, not because the world changed, but because you stopped fighting it. You no longer treat events as threats to suppress, but as messages to understand. The sixth sign is a shift from knowledge to wisdom. Jung wrote that knowledge rests not upon truth alone, but upon error as well. It is built on mistakes. And only when you dare to move through your own mistakes, instead of hiding them behind arguments, does wisdom begin to form. Wisdom is not the accumulation of information. It is the transformation of experience. Knowledge belongs to the mind. Wisdom belongs to the whole of you. Knowledge analyzes. Wisdom understands. Knowledge searches for answers. Wisdom knows how to ask the right question. When you operate from knowledge alone, you are easily pulled into the need to be right. You debate to defend your view. But when wisdom takes root, being right or wrong loses its urgency. You care more about what is true and what helps everyone grow. This shift is subtle. You begin to speak more slowly, not because you lack ideas, but because you consider the impact of your words. You are no longer compelled to respond immediately when someone disagrees. You allow a pause. In that pause, you listen not only to the other person, but to the reaction rising in yourself. That capacity for self-observation is a sign that consciousness is expanding. In work, a knowledge-centered person focuses on performance. A person approaching wisdom cares about meaning. They don't just ask, "How can I succeed?" They ask, "Who am I becoming through this?" The second question carries deeper power because it touches the process of individuation. When you shift from knowledge to wisdom, you are no longer afraid to say, "I don't know." That sentence no longer threatens your ego. It becomes an open space for discovery. You accept that life is more complex than any theory. You understand that humans cannot be reduced to formulas. Humility becomes the foundation of wisdom. At the threshold of Sophia, you stop collecting light like achievements. You allow it to sink into your being, to change how you see, love, and choose. Instead of becoming someone who knows a great deal, you become someone who understands deeply enough to live sincerely. The seventh sign is that you sense the sacred within the ordinary. This is not romanticizing life. It is a shift in the structure of perception. Jung emphasized that symbols are the language of the soul, and the soul speaks not only through mystical dreams, but through the smallest details of everyday life. When your consciousness becomes wide and still enough, you begin to perceive depth in what once seemed trivial. Jung wrote that the least of things with a meaning is worth more than the greatest thing without it. When you approach wisdom, you no longer judge events by their scale. You sense the depth beneath the surface. A person operating from knowledge may see washing dishes as a chore. But when wisdom is present, the act becomes a quiet ritual. Water running over your hands, soap dissolving, each plate cleared, as if you were cleansing the clutter of your own mind. The action hasn't changed. Your presence has. You are no longer rushing toward a more important moment. You are fully inside the one that is here. The sacred also appears in how you see others. You don't just see their social roles, cashier, driver, colleague. You sense the complex inner world behind each face. Each person carries dreams, wounds, memories. That awareness softens you. You judge less. You stop placing yourself at the center of every story. Psychologically, this means the ego no longer occupies the entire stage. As it steps back, a deeper dimension of the psyche, what Jung called the self, begins to shine through. The self doesn't need drama. It is present in the quiet connection between you and the world. You might sit alone in a cafe, hear the clink of a spoon, and suddenly feel overwhelming gratitude for no reason. Nothing great happened, yet you feel exactly where you belong. This shift also transforms difficulty. Instead of seeing challenges as punishment, you ask, what is this teaching me? Even sadness carries a sacred quality because it lets you touch your own depth. You no longer escape discomfort by chasing distraction. You sit with it, as you would with an old friend who needs to be heard. Sensing the sacred in the ordinary binds you more deeply to life. You appreciate a meal, a conversation, a breath. You understand you don't have to wait for a special day to live fully. Every day holds a doorway into depth if you are awake enough to open it. The eighth and final sign is that you return to the simplest core of yourself. In the early stages, you are constantly trying to become someone. You build an image, refine skills, accumulate achievements, define yourself through roles. You want to be deeper, more successful, more unique. Each step feels like adding another layer. And for a long time, you believe the more layers you wear, the more valuable you are. As you move towards Sophia, the movement reverses. You are no longer obsessed with adding. You begin to remove. You remove expectations that were never truly yours. You remove borrowed beliefs. You remove the need to impress. What you long for is something that sounds almost too simple, to be yourself in your most original, undefended state. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming here doesn't mean decorating yourself with more attributes. It means returning. Returning to the core that existed before it was covered by family conditioning, social demands, and personal fears. This simplicity is not naivety. It is the result of traveling far and then coming back home. You no longer pretend to be mysterious to seem profound. You no longer pretend to be strong to hide your wounds. You can say, I am sad, I am afraid, I don't know without shame. This return reshapes your choices. You may have once chased predefined success, a title, possessions, recognition. Then you begin to ask, what truly makes me feel alive? The answer may be simple. Meaningful work over prestige. Sincere friendships over glamorous connections. A quiet morning over a packed schedule. Imagine a tree. When young, it strains upward, branches spreading in every direction. When mature, it no longer rushes. Its roots sink deep. Its trunk stands firm. It doesn't need to prove it's a great tree. It simply is. A person near Sophia is the same. Stability comes from inner depth, not outer display. Strangely, the more simple you become, the more authentic and compelling you feel. Others sense the alignment between your words and your being. You no longer have to remember which mask you wore yesterday, because today you are still yourself. That naturalness creates safety for those around you. Returning to your simplest core also means accepting limits. You no longer strive to be someone's perfect version. You know you carry strengths and weaknesses. Instead of fighting imperfection, you learn to be gentle with it. That gentleness makes you whole. At the highest stage, you realize you don't need to become something grand to have value. You only need to return to the essence that has always been there. No display, no embellishment, just a conscious, unguarded presence. And in that simplicity, Sophia reveals itself, not as a distant peak, but as a natural state, when every layer has been set down, and you stand there, quiet, honest, and free. After walking through all these signs, perhaps what matters most is not whether you have reached Sophia, but whether you are honest enough to listen to the movement within yourself. This journey is quiet. No medals are given. No one stands outside to confirm it. It unfolds in the nights when you face emptiness, in the moments when you choose silence over reaction, in the times when you stop chasing an image and accept yourself as you are. Sophia does not turn you into someone else. It makes you more fully who you have always been. The echo of wisdom does not resound loudly, but it remains there, like a soft background music, supporting every step you take from this point forward. If this exploration resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought. We explore the depths of psychology so you can understand the hidden architecture of your own soul. And if you're ready to go deeper, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, with 24 practical reflection exercises inspired by the teachings of Carl Jung. The link is in the description below.